Welcome to this episode of the Leading in Dentistry Podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. After spending the last 20 years in a variety of leadership positions, and as a student of leadership myself, I started Leading in Dentistry to share what I found and to continue learning with you. If anything from this episode stands out, check out the show notes, our online courses, or one-on-one coaching on leadingindentistry.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry Podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. For those of you new to the podcast, I am a practicing associate dentist just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I started Leading in Dentistry to help develop the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office, not just the business owner. And I started this podcast specifically while I'm not an owner of any dental practice because I really want to get across the message that you don't need to wait until you're in charge to be a leader. Now, on this episode of the podcast, I wanted to share a story of something that I saw this last week, and it made me reflect on how we do things the hard way. And if there is a way for us to find a way to do something more efficiently and better, then we should absolutely try to figure that out. And so oftentimes we see leaders who get into ruts, who get into the same old processes and never find the time to update those processes and find out the right way to do things. So today I wanted to share with you a little bit that what I was thinking about and how we can kind of get over those humps. So what happened was I was gathering my family together. We always say evening prayers right before we go to bed. And I was waiting for our daughter to come and join us. And everyone was there ready. And my youngest child, who is 4, she was taking her sweet time to make her way to where we were all gathering. And so I went and found her in her room, and she was in her closet getting on these sweatpant pajamas that she had. And the pajamas were inside out, and so she was having a hard time putting them on. And I offered to help her out, and she declined. She actually had an idea on how she was going to make it work. She's at that age where she doesn't know how to flip inside out any clothes when she gets them. So what she did know, though, was that every time that she takes off a pair of sweatpants, they always end up inverted. They always end up inside out. And so she said, "Here's what I'm going to do, Dad. I'm going to put on the pajamas inside out, and then I'll take them off, which will make them the right way, and then I'll put them on." So then I sat there and watched her put on the pajamas inside out and then take them off. And then when she took them off, they were now inverted. They were the correct way. And then she put them on and she said, "See, it worked." And I thought it was hilarious because obviously there is an easier way to do that, but she was so proud of herself because she figured something out and problem solved. So as a parent, absolutely very proud of my daughter for figuring that out and showing me a different way of doing something. But as I was reflecting on the story later, I thought about how in leadership and in business ownership and in the day-to-day grind of a dental office, we do the same thing so many times. We think that we're doing something the right way, or at least we found a way that works for us, and we don't really know there's a better way of doing it. So just as she will one day learn that, I hope that today's episode we can revisit some of the things that we might be doing that are keeping us from reaching our potential because we're just kind of making things up as we go along. So I wanted to go over 3 different ways that we make things a little bit harder than they need to be. And the first way that we make things hard on ourselves is by not reading the instructions. And when we get some new process, or if we get some new software, some new piece of equipment, and then we just kind of fiddle around with it, oftentimes we can find a way to make it work, but that is not the best way to make it work. There are certain ways that these things have been designed that can help us out. So in our practice, for example, we have Open Dental, and we know that the way that we've been doing things, it works. It works. There's nothing wrong with the way that we do it. But it is not the way that it's been designed to work. And as we have gone back and reviewed some of the training videos from Open Dental, and we've tried to figure out what's the best way to do this, we are learning all these little things about these buttons that we could have pushed and these bells and whistles that it has. And it's not that it overcomplicates the system, but it actually makes things easier. How many times have we been doing something and then we learn, oh, that's what that's for. And then afterwards we kick ourselves because of how much wasted time we've spent trying to figure it out on our own. And so the first way that I think we can really save ourselves a lot of heartache and not make things so hard is to start reading the instructions, start opening ourselves up to doing things right from the beginning. There's a quote from the legendary Coach John Wooden, and he says, "If you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over?" And, you've heard variations of quotes like that so many times about do it right or do it twice. And if we are developing systems that are built around what we think is a good idea, instead of trying to figure out how things should be done in the first place, then we're going to spend so much wasted time basically redoing the work that we're doing over and over and over again, instead of finding a way to develop a process, develop a system based around the intended use of the software, the equipment, or even the technique that we're using. So the first item on the list, the way we make things harder for ourselves, is when we do not read the instructions, when we do not figure out the right way to do something from the get-go. Every summer, the dental corner of the internet lights up with the same question. What's the most important skill a new grad should focus on? Is it implants, molar endo, surgical extractions? And year after year, the answer from experienced dentists is the same: leadership and communication. These are the skills that elevate every part of your career, no matter what your role is in the dental office. That's why we're offering special pricing on the Leading in Dentistry Leadership Development Program, exclusively for new graduates and newcomers to the dental field. Whether you choose our 90-day guided course with bi-weekly coaching or the on-demand version to go at your own pace, you'll get access at a significantly reduced price. 50% off from graduates from this year, 40% off for graduates 1 year out, and 30% off for graduates 2 years out. And this offer is not just for dentists, it's open to hygienists and any new dental team member who has started within the last 3 years. If you're ready to take your leadership skills to the next level, head over to leadingindentistry.com/newgrad to learn more. That's leadingindentistry.com/newgrad. The second way we make things harder on ourselves is when we try to go it alone. So in this story with my daughter, when she's sitting there trying to put on her pajamas her own way, she did not want my help. And it's great. At that age, she's supposed to be figuring things out. I'm supposed to be letting her develop her self-confidence by working her way through different problems. But when we are in the professional realm, when we are working in healthcare, when we're working in the dental office, how much better is it if we can rely on a team? And if we don't do that, if we don't try to engage the team, we don't try to involve other people, what we do is we put it all on ourselves, and then we become resentful of everyone who's not helping us. And that is just going to destroy your culture. If you are trying to go it alone, you're not asking for guidance, you're not collaborating, and then you end up not building trust that you need in your team in order to rely on them and depend on them when you do need to start delegating things. And so what ends up happening is the system that you designed, like we talked about in the first way that we mess things up, not reading instructions or developing systems the right way the first time. When you involve or when you don't involve people in your process, then it's going to be you against the world. And how many times in the dental office, and dentists specifically, are a silo. We try to be an island apart from everyone else. And by doing this, we just further exacerbate that. We magnify the feelings of loneliness and isolation and then become resentful of the team. And that's just going to destroy culture. It doesn't help anybody. I know we're all familiar with that quote from the African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And there are many things that, we're smart people in dentistry. I know we can figure things out. I know we can do them by ourselves. But when you involve other people, not only are you helping them grow, but you are also making your life easier. You are not doing it the hard way anymore. So the second item on the list on ways that we make things harder for ourselves is when we try to go it alone. The third item on the list, the third way that we make things harder for ourselves, is by not regularly revisiting our systems. And one of my favorite stories is a story about Thanksgiving, which is coming up in a couple of months. And in this story, there is a mother who is cooking her Thanksgiving turkey. And she cuts the legs off, puts them in the oven, and the grandmother comes over to visit for Thanksgiving, obviously. And she says, "It's so funny that you still do that." And the mother says, "Do what?" And the grandmother says, "You cut the legs off of the turkey before putting it in the oven." And the mom says, well, this is the way that I've always learned how to do it. That's the way that her mom had taught her, and that's the way that the grandmother had taught the mother in the first place. And so what the grandmother says is, the only reason I did that was because our oven back in the day was so small that it couldn't fit the turkey inside. And so I would cut the legs off the turkey in order to cook it. And so she had developed this system, and then people had followed after her without ever asking why things were done that way. And I just think it's so silly when we do the same thing. We pass on certain ways of doing things just because that's the way that it's always been done. And that is by far, I mean, I have a lot of favorite quotes, but my least favorite saying that people have is that this is the way we've always done it. I mean, there is no dumber reason to do something just other than the fact that that's the way it's always been done. Those processes should be revisited. Systems should be updated and changed. I mean, imagine still having film x-rays or still having paper charts just because that's the way that you've done it before. And I hope no one out there listening still has those, but if you do, it's time to revisit that system. There is a better way of doing things. The flip side of this, just as a little caveat, is that if you don't ever develop a system and you're constantly reinventing things, you never really give people the stability in order to get a good grasp on the processes. So that is something that you need to be aware of, but I think the bigger problem is people just doing things the way that they've always been done and not trying to update those systems. If my daughter, when she is in her mid-20s, is still putting on her pajamas inside out in order to take them off and put them back on again, I think that will be a big parenting fail on my part. And so I want to make sure that similarly, all the leaders out there are making sure that you revisit your systems and update them regularly. I would say it's good to review your processes at least once a year, but every time that we're doing something, just asking yourself, is there a better way of doing this? And then when it's time to make the change, take your time so that you're not upending your team and getting them to feel like there's no sort of consistency. There's a great episode that we did a while back. I'll put a link to it in the show notes about when to make a change and how to make a change. But it's something that needs to be done on a regular basis. Otherwise, things get stagnant. There's a quote from Thomas Jefferson that says, if you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you have never done. I've also heard it said before that what got you here won't get you there. In order to get somewhere that you have never been before, it's going to take doing things just a little bit differently and revisiting the way that you've been doing them. So, in review, the 3 ways that we make things harder for ourselves, that we self-sabotage the ways that we want to get things done, is first when we don't read the instructions, when we don't take the time up front in order to get things done or our processes done the right way, we end up just making something up and then perpetuating that forever. The second way we make things harder on ourselves is when we try to go it alone. And then the third way is when we do not revisit our systems, when we just do things the way that they've always been done without questioning, why is it done this way? And is there a better way? So if you've learned something today, I hope that you can share this with someone. I hope that you're able to take something away into your practice for this next week. And with that, as always be leading and always be learning. We'll see you next time. And that's it for this episode of the Leading in Dentistry Podcast. If you learned something today, please leave a 5-star review and share the episode with a friend. If you're ready to take the next step for yourself or provide leadership training for a team member, visit leadingindentistry.com to check out our online courses and one-on-one coaching.